Hello, I'm Blue, and today I want to show you how to use Clip Studio Paint's simple mode to create illustrations like this. This video is brought to you by Clip Studio Paint. When you first open the tablet version of Clip Studio Paint, it'll look something like this. It mimics the PC version with all the little tools on the side, and it has basically everything that the Clip Studio Paint PC version has. This can be very overwhelming if you have a smaller device or if you're new to Clip Studio Paint. That's why they have created simple mode. To switch to simple mode, all you have to do is tap this little button down here at the bottom, and it will switch to a clean layout like this. There's a lot more space to draw, and all the tools you need are right around the edges, and I feel like this program is a lot more intuitive. If you're not used to simple mode, there is a tutorial up here which goes through almost everything on this canvas. It's very cool and definitely suggest checking it out. I'll show you the brushes I use and then I'll get started with the art. If you click the brush icon over here, you can import brushes you use from studio mode. All you have to do is tap the little plus button up here, and then the options to import brushes will come up, and then you find it in whichever tool section on Clip Studio Paint it is. So pen or brushes. The two brushes I'm using are ones that I've edited for myself called Ko and Yuki. I've edited these two brushes to work with the mobile device because my regular Clip Studio Paint brushes don't feel the same as they do on PC. I'll have them linked down below for free if you want to use them. Now let's get started. First I'll open the canvas, which is a 2000 by 3000 pixels. My iPad is pretty small and doesn't run very well, so this canvas size works very well on simple mode and it doesn't lag it at all, so that's great. Here's a fun tip that I like to do. I love to doodle in simple mode, and it's what I've been doing for like the past 2 weeks now. But you cannot have multiple canvases open in simple mode. So to combat this, what I do is I set the canvas to an animation and then I turn off the onion skin down here. This way you can flip between the drawings like pages, since you can have layers that are separate from animation cells per se. So the first piece of art I made for this video I ended up not liking. I couldn't come up with a cool composition and I couldn't really understand what story I wanted to tell with the piece, so I ended up scrapping it and starting over. I did this doodle a couple days ago and I couldn't get it out of my head, so I decided to finish up this doodle for this video. I have already added colors to it, so that's why it looks like this. The basic idea of this piece is to show this character mid-movement with like some fire and blueberries around her to kind of give like this like intense movement and some like dramatic scene, I guess. I really wanted to work on my depth perception here, since I don't do a lot of pieces where something is coming at the screen. For the colors, I decided I wanted to do a majority orange base, and then I wanted to add pops of blue using the blueberries so it'll balance out a little bit. Using the Ko brush, I start by outlining it pretty messily. Clip Studio Paint's simple mode is compatible with a keyboard. So I have this cheap keyboard I bought myself about 6 years ago, connected to my iPad through Bluetooth, and then using the preference and the shortcuts, I will be able to switch between my eraser and my pen brush easily, which makes the sketching feel a lot more intuitive and a lot easier. Yeah. While I'm drawing in the background, here are some sketches that I finished while practicing for this video. I think they look really cool and I'm really satisfied. I'm not normally able to draw like this on my iPad, so it feels really nice. I'm just keeping the lines somewhat clean, since I didn't initially go into this thinking I would fully render the piece. So I was hoping the line art would be clean enough for it to be the final product. I play around some more to try and figure out the composition and the expression, and then I have this. I like it, but I do feel parts of this art is lacking and the composition seems a bit stiff. For example, I feel like this part over here is very empty, it doesn't really have the movement that I want, as well as I think it's a very wide shot. I'm not sure why I decided to draw everything so wide, but I'm hoping to fix that up later and add more details as I am cleaning up the drawing. I make a layer beneath the line art that I just did, and this will be my gray base layer. Simple mode has the lasso fill tool incorporated, so if you circle where the line art is, it will auto fill like this. You can find this tool in the bucket tool up here and just switch between either bucket tool or lasso tool. Sometimes it's not perfectly accurate because my lines are very messy and very untransparent, so I go in and clean around the messy edges. I have a really hard time keeping things super clean, so it's always a bit messy, but I think that's just how my style looks. Coloring of values. Once this gray base layer is set, I will create a top layer and set it to clipping mask. That means whatever I draw on this gray layer will not leave the gray layer. So it's basically just like a little wall that I put around it. Then I grab a red color and I make the whole thing red. I do this kind of thing like an underpainting in traditional art. I choose this color based on whatever I want the main color of the drawing to be, And for this one, I want it to be more orange. So then when I go in and I start adding the base colors to the top, and if my brush has low transparency, you will be able to see the red base color everywhere. This will just make all the base colors look harmonious together because they all have this red undertint to it, kind of like traditional media. Using the Yuki brush, I will start adding the base colors. Simple mode has sliders under the color wheel, which is super helpful because you can just shift the color around and it will shift this like little marker up here so you can easily visualize it. This is super helpful because I've never been able to use sliders before because I have a hard time visualizing which color it will pick, but this allows me to choose the colors a lot more accurately, so you'll see me use this throughout the video. I add the colors using the Yuki brush, lightly layering them on like I'm showing you here. Then I'll make a new layer, set it to multiply, and add shadows. The shadow color that I'm using is this light pastel gray purple color, but you can use whichever one you want. The Yuki brush is nice because the lighter you press, the less opacity it has, but the harder you press, the darker it gets. This allows you to create interesting values without having to switch brushes as often. For example, if you want to add like a very light shadow, you can just press very lightly, and then when you want to add like maybe an overlapping shadow, you can just press harder. It means you don't have to go out of the layer and you don't have to have that many layers. You can just use one layer and one brush. I will also switch to speed paint footage here because the screen recording makes the colors look very washed out and a bit weird. I prefer screen recording because you can see what I'm doing physically, but because I'm showing you how I color, I think it's safer to switch to this one. After the multiply layer, I choose a light peach color and I color over the objects in the background. I think personally this helps create depth and makes it look more interesting. Then with the same peach color, I will add a backlight and set this layer to a hard light. This just creates like a darker red color. I don't know, I think it looks nice. Since this whole piece is very brown and red, I would like to combat this a little bit. So I'm going to go in with an opposite color, which will be a blue, and I'm going to add this to contrast the red. I'm going to add this on the opposite side of where I added the hard light layer. I will not be using any blending modes and I'll simply just turn down the layer opacity. Since I don't want this blue color to become muddy or change, I just want this slight light blue here. I will do this again with a deeper blue on smaller sections, and then I'll repeat it again. The coloring process is basically me just layering colors until I like the way they look. So I'm going to skip past this because I kind of just go back and forth between the same blending modes over and over again, and then it looks something like this. I'm pretty pleased with how the colors and the shading looks. This is where I realized that yeah, I kind of do want to fully render this, so the neat line art was slightly pointless, but oh well. Now we're going to merge all the layers down into one layer so we can render it. You can actually do this in simple mode. I did not know this. So the way you merge layers is tap on the layer and this little options will pop up, and if you like scroll down, more layer options will come up. I did not know this when I was making this piece, but yeah, it's super helpful. So yeah, there's more layers options, just scroll. I merge the layers down into one and then I copy paste them, so then I have two of the same drawing. The bottom one I will use as reference, and then the top one I will paint on. So basically I can just turn off whatever I've rendered to see if I like what I've done or if I don't. I'm going to be using my keyboard a lot here, so I can use the eyedropper tool easily without having to reach over and change it every time I want to pick up a color. If you are also using a Bluetooth keyboard, you can hold the Alt button to select colors quickly and it'll switch back to your brush, so it's like a seamless way to like pick up colors. I'm using both the Ko and Yuki brush right now. There isn't a lot of logic or reason to why I'm switching between the brushes for the rendering, it's mostly just for the texture. If I use the Yuki brush too often, it'll look too messy and soft since the brush has a lot of softer edges and not very solid. It's more painty, I guess. But if I use the Ko brush too often, it'll look too hard, and that's not really the style that I'm going for in this one. So I'm just trying to balance them out and trying to use them equal amounts throughout the drawing. I'm making sure that I use the colors already on the canvas, since they're all chosen to suit each other, and I do not want to add some random hues into here that will throw off the harmonizing colors that I've already put down. I also added more elements to ensure that the piece looks more dynamic. For example, I realized that this piece is very long and I kind of don't like the way they look, so I grabbed everything and I moved everything a bit closer from the left, so it's like it's a quicker movement and it's a little bit closer to the character. And then I added a lot more flames and a lot more blueberries just to help fill in these empty spaces. I really like the way this looks. I think it's looking very nice. I feel like I am very close to finishing it, but I would like to edit some of the colors again. Then I'm going to switch back to studio mode to add some of the final color edits, since Clip Studio Paint studio mode has a lot of interesting ways you can edit the colors. The two that I'll be using is tone curves and gradient maps. Then I'll blur some of the characters to add some depth, and I'll add some particles here and there, and we're done. I had a lot of fun drawing this piece, and I really like the way the colors came out, and I also like the composition. I think it looks a lot better than what it did at the start. I really like that the blueberries are kind of being flung around and they look really happy about it. And I also really like the backlight that I added. I have really been enjoying doing that again. I've also really been enjoying doodling in Clip Studio Paint Simple Mode, and I will probably keep doing that. So I do hope you give it a try as well. It can feel a bit awkward at first, but it does get like a lot better the more you use it. And I'm just really happy to be able to color a piece on my iPad, because I actually have a lot of trouble selecting colors on my iPad with other art programs that I've been using. I think it's maybe how small the color wheel is, or that the fact that some programs just don't have good colors that you can see, but the Clip Studio Paint version really helped me be able to see them very nicely. So thank you so much. I hope this helps a little with getting used to simple mode. I know when I first saw it, I thought it wouldn't be as good as studio mode, so I didn't really give it a try, but it's actually incredibly fun and intuitive, so let me know if you try it out. Thank you again to Clip Studio Paint for sponsoring this video and allowing me to draw my silly characters. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye!